After receiving a note from Mary Jones, U.S. Senator John W. Kern sprang into action with the Senate Kern's resolution of May 26, 1913. This resolution had a committee on education and labor to open up an investigation into the treatment and conditions of the West Virginia coal miners. At the same time, they also opened an investigation into the states of Colorado and Michigan for their copper and coal mining operations in those states. The goal of the committee was to find out exactly how many deaths were related to the strike and identify who was responsible for them. There are estimates that the strike itself led to 50 violent deaths. This is not taking into account how many deaths occurred at the Holly Grove campsite of the horrible living conditions there. During the investigation, members of the committee went to see Governor Hatfield. After talking to him, Governor Hatfield promised to release those who had been thrown in jail. The governor would also recognize the right to organize and to strike, with the promise that all striking miners would be returned to work. The committee further went on to condemn Hatfield for his stance and actions on the socialist newspapers and called for him to be censured. Hatfield denied any actions taken beyond the suppression of the newspapers. During the month of July 1913, the strike once again came to national attention as there was a huge back and forth criticisms of investigating committee members and false statements made in the press. This led to a fracture between the Socialist Party and the unions that exists to this day. As the thought remains that the miners did not grab their guns for lofty ideas, that this was the only weapons that they had to fight to remain alive. There were 2 lawsuits that came out of that dispute, and both of them were later dropped. The fight would continue between Mary Jones and the United Mine Workers of America and the Baldwin Felts Detective Agency, as they would once again come against each other later that same year. In the Colorado Coalfield War of September 1913 and the Ludlow Massacre of April 1914, the fight between miners and operators would continue to rage. The Colorado Coalfield War began over a strike against the Rockefeller-owned Colorado Fuel and Iron Company and workers. An estimated 69 to 199 people died during that Colorado Coalfield War, and it is considered to be the bloodiest labor dispute in American history. The Ludlow Massacre was again striking against the Rockefeller-owned Colorado Fuel and Iron Company, and there were 21 people, including women and children, who were killed in the conflict. As our page is mainly concentrated on the history of the Appalachian Mountains, it is very important to understand that the Paint Cabin Creek strike began a period of wars between the labor unions, owner and operators of mines of this nation, lasting between April 18, 1912 through July 1913. There were approximately 50 deaths related to the strike directly, as well as many more deaths in the Holly Grove camps due to starvation and malnutrition. Estimates from the damages from the strike and violence would cost about $100 million. Even though there were hundreds of arrests made, they were released from jail and allowed to return to work. The co-operators and Baldwin Felts were never charged or implicated in their part of the strike, which would cause a lasting trend to this day. The Paint Cabin Creek strike would go down in history as being one of the more violent labor confrontations in history. We hope that you have enjoyed our series on the Paint Cabin Creek strike of 1912. In our next series, We will return to West Virginia for the most famous of these wars, the Battle of Matewan and the Battle for Blair Mountain. Thank you for watching.